Scorpio, listen to me for a moment, because something is happening around you right now that you cannot fully see, but you can definitely feel. There is a man in your life who is learning the biggest lesson of his life because of you, and you have no idea how deeply you are reshaping him just by being exactly who you are. While you go about your days, speaking your truth, reacting honestly, refusing to play games or sugarcoat what you feel, this man is quietly unraveling from the inside out. Every word you say, every boundary you hold, every time you choose depth over small talk and honesty over comfort, you are dismantling patterns he's carried for years, maybe even decades. He has lived most of his life behind invisible armor, using charm, logic, distraction, and emotional distance to keep people exactly where he wants them. Far enough to admire him, close enough to be useful, but never so close that they could see his fears, his doubts, or his vulnerability. He learned how to say what people wanted to hear, how to project the right image, how to appear confident even when he felt lost. And for a long time, it worked. People believed the version of himself he presented. They accepted the mask as truth. But then you appeared, Scorpio, and everything began to crack, because your energy does not negotiate with illusions. You do not respond to pretense. You don't care about how polished someone looks if their soul feels hollow. You don't melt for surface-level gestures when your intuition is picking up on what's unspoken. You are drawn to what is real, even if it's messy, complicated, or unfinished. And this man has never had to face someone like you before. With you, his usual tactics fall flat. The rehearsed responses, the charming smiles, the half-truths that used to work so well suddenly feel empty and ineffective. You can see right through them, and that terrifies him more than he would ever admit. He feels exposed in your presence, not because you call him out aggressively, but because you simply refuse to engage with anything that isn't honest. Your silence in the face of his performance is louder than any speech. Your calm gaze when he tries to hide is more confronting than any argument. Deep down, he senses that you are someone he cannot fool, cannot control, cannot manipulate. And that realization is shaking the foundations of his identity. You might have noticed his behavior shifting in strange ways, moments where he grows unusually quiet after a meaningful conversation, as if your words are echoing inside his chest long after the moment has passed. Moments where his eyes soften and you glimpse a raw, unguarded version of him, quickly replaced by his usual composure. Moments where he overreacts emotionally to something small, then pulls back, embarrassed, as if he accidentally revealed too much. These are not random mood swings. They are signs of a silent internal war. One part of him wants to hold on to the safety of his old patterns, keeping his distance, staying in control, never revealing too much. Another part of him is being pulled powerfully toward the depth and honesty he feels when he is around you. You are the embodiment of a life he didn't believe he could live, a life where someone sees him, really sees him, and doesn't run away. And that possibility both terrifies him and keeps him coming back. The lesson he's learning through you is simple but massive, that real connection demands courage, that intimacy cannot exist where masks are allowed to rule, and that love without truth is emptiness dressed as comfort. His whole life he thought survival meant control, controlling emotions, controlling stories, controlling what others saw. But standing in front of you, he is being shown a different model. You survive by being real. You protect yourself not by pretending, but by honoring your own truth. You don't shrink yourself to avoid rejection. You accept that only the right people will stay when they see who you truly are. You're teaching him that the very things he believed would make him lose people, vulnerability, honesty, emotional openness, are actually the only path to genuine love. The more time he spends in your energy, the harder it becomes for him to keep living the way he did before. He starts to notice how shallow his old conversations feel. He sees how many connections in his life are built on politeness and performance rather than real understanding. He realizes how lonely it is to always pretend to be fine. And little by little, he begins to change. Maybe he starts asking deeper questions. Maybe he stops laughing everything off and actually shares something real. Maybe he quietly distances himself from people who only know the masked version of him and feels drawn instead to places where he can breathe as his true self, even if that space is still unfamiliar and scary. You are not just a person in his story, Scorpio. You are the turning point. What he's learning from you will ripple into every area of his life. How he speaks to his family, how he shows up at work, what kind of friendships he keeps, what he looks for in love. You are helping him understand that it is better to be rejected for who you truly are than loved for a role you can't bear to play anymore. You're helping him see that perfection is not required for love, and that trying to impress people is a poor substitute for actually being known. You might not receive credit for this lesson. He may never fully articulate how much you changed him, but years from now, when he finds himself choosing honesty instead of hiding, choosing emotional courage instead of avoidance, choosing depth instead of safety, those choices will be traced back to the time he met you. And Scorpio, this lesson is not just for him. It is also for you, because while he is learning to open, you are learning to trust your own impact. While he is learning that he doesn't have to pretend, you are learning that you don't have to dim your truth to be loved. You are learning that your intensity is not too much. It is simply too real for those who are committed to living half-lives. You may have doubted yourself at times. You may have wondered if you were asking for too much, feeling too deeply, seeing too clearly. You may have questioned whether you were the problem when others pulled away from your honesty. But watching this man wrestle with his own fear because your presence refuses to let him stay asleep is proof of something powerful. Your energy is a catalyst for transformation. Your role in people's lives is not to be easy, light, and forgettable. Your role is to awaken what has been hiding, even when it shakes them, even when it scares them, even when it sends them into a deep inner questioning. You are not chaotic, Scorpio. You are clarity entering a life built on avoidance. And clarity always feels like chaos to those who have lived in confusion. There will be moments when his resistance feels personal, times when he pulls away, shuts down, or acts like your depth is too heavy. But understand that the resistance isn't to you. It is to what you represent, a life where he can no longer hide, a life where he must choose between comfort and authenticity. He is afraid of losing control, but more than that, he is afraid of losing you once you see everything. He is terrified that when he finally shows you his unedited self, you will walk away. What he doesn't fully grasp yet is that you are not looking for perfection, you are looking for truth, and the man who learns that lesson because of you will never be the same. The process he's walking through will not be neat or predictable. Some days he will lean into the transformation, feeling hopeful, brave, and open. Other days he will retreat into old habits, saying less, staying vague, joking instead of feeling, trying to convince himself that it's safer to be who he used to be. But even in those regressions, the seed you've planted continues to grow. Once someone has tasted what it's like to be seen and still held, to be known and still chosen, they can never fully go back to their old ways. They might delay the change, they might resist it, but they cannot unknow what they now know. Scorpio, this whole story is not a fixed prophecy or a guarantee. Think of it as a mirror held gently in front of your heart, a symbolic reflection of what might be unfolding in your life or in your emotional world right now. This narrative is a mirror, a reflection of a potential timeline, a story whispered into the universe for the souls who recognize themselves between the lines. It is not a command, not a rigid prediction, but a soft invitation to look more closely at your own power and presence. If this message resonates with you, if you feel that quiet inner yes as you listen, then take the parts that feel true and let them affirm what your intuition already knew. If it doesn't fit your situation, let it pass like a cloud, crossing a vast sky, without forcing it to apply where it does not belong. For not every story is meant for every heart. You are always the one with the final say over what you allow into your spirit. Your discernment is sacred, your intuition is your wisest guide, and if something inside you whispers that yes, there is a man whose life is being rewritten because of the way you love, the way you speak, the way you stand in your truth, then honor that. Acknowledge the transformation without needing to control its outcome. You don't have to chase him, fix him, or rush his process. Your task is not to carry his healing for him, but to remain rooted in your own. The greatest lesson of all is that your authenticity is enough. You don't need to twist yourself to be softer, quieter, or smaller in order to be loved. The man who is meant to walk beside you will not only endure the truth of who you are, he will be transformed by it. And whether this particular man stays for a season or becomes a lifelong companion, the imprint you leave will guide him for years to come. In time, he may look back and realize that the moment he started truly living, rather than just surviving, was the moment your paths crossed. He will remember the way your words pierced through his excuses, the way your presence made him question his old patterns, the way your honesty felt like both a challenge and a blessing. And somewhere in the privacy of his own mind, he will whisper a thank you to the Scorpio who unknowingly taught him the biggest lesson of his life, that it is far more beautiful, far more powerful, and far more peaceful to be real than to be impressive.